The Birth of Prince Onyx, written by Stanislaus. Chapter 1. A New Prince. Hospital in St. Augustine, Earth 2357. A man was driving through the evening sky, rocking along the road as he was driving for his life. He wasn't driving for his life, he was driving for his unborn child's life. To the hospital. His wife had been at her younger sister's home, and her water broke, so she was already giving birth by the man's assumption. He was driving over the speed limit, but it was worth it, even amid a ticket to pay. Oh God. If you can hear me, please, let her be okay. After a small drive, he was now waiting anxiously and impatiently in the lobby of the hospital. The father-to-be held his head in his hands in silence, painful silence. As he did so, his heart was beating so loud that he thought that it would be heard by those around him. The man's hands were shaking awfully. His wife was in the surgery room because she apparently needed to have a C-section operation in order for his newborn child to be born. Sweat was running down his forehead like bullets firing from a gun. He was paranoid, as though he was asking himself, will my child live? Which, in truth, he was. As the minutes passed, they felt like hours to this man, but thankfully, through a double door walked the doctor, the very same doctor who would give him the verdict that he was painfully waiting for. Looking up on his hands, he looked to the doctor. Is she okay? He asked nervously. The doctor sighed. He despised this part of the job, even when the news is good. Your wife is fine. The child, however, sir. Placing a hand on his shoulder, the doctor braced himself for the worst. I'm sorry. There ensued a long silence between the two. That is, before the father began to weep. No, I... Listen, Daniel, I apologize. I really do. Your child has suffered internal bleeding. We did everything we could, but it wasn't enough. The weeping grew louder. The doctor was holding the father in his arms, and the father was crying into his shoulder, as though they were father and son. But the embrace was ended moments later when a nurse whispered something to the doctor. I have to go. Your wife should wake up in about an hour or two, he said to the father, leaving him as the nurse took him to the same room that the child's mother-to-be was in. I don't know where he went, the nurse said, standing in the doorway. You mean you lost track of a dead child? The doctor scolded. Karen. The nurse looked at the doctor. I'm sorry. I don't know where he could have gone. Who could have taken him? I don't. Well, we'll look for him. Come on. They looked for hours, every room, but with great unfortune to no avail. The child was nowhere to be found. They'd given up. They had given up. Dr. Merring? I lied. The nurse shamefully admitted, being in the lobby with the doctor. You lied? What do you mean? Dr. Merring glared at her. She began to tell what she meant. She told him that she was sitting on a chair, looking at the deceased child. The curtains were to be closed. The curtains that were to be closed were open, letting the night sky be seen by all those in the room. The stars were many in the sky, as many as Karen's tears. As she sympathized for the mother, who would find out the horrible truth when she awoke, she closed her eyes and prayed. She prayed to God, hoping that he would embrace the child's life in heaven, letting him become an angel. But when she opened her eyes, the child's body was gone. It must have been the work of God, Karen uttered. I don't know what else. She sniffled. The doctor wiped away her tears of guilt. Don't worry, Karen. We'll find out what happened soon. Are you sure? Absolutely. The Royal Gardens, Equestria. She walked through the gardens, each step making a clip-clop noise. If you were to lay eyes upon her, the sight would make you calm inside, for she held an everlasting sense of beauty and grace. She had both wings and horn and a coat of pristine. Wait. She have both wings and horn and her coat, a pristine white with a mark of the sun on her flanks. Her mane cascaded like a waterfall overhead, being of multiple colors. The mane was elusive. It seemed to move in a wave-like motion. The same went for her tail. They put people into some form of trance at first sight, as though they would say to themselves, Is there a draft in here? No? Okay. But as this beautiful creature walked, she stopped in place, lowering her head to hear sound better. The sound of her own tears hitting the ground. Why? She asked herself, looking at a silent, graceful moon that hung in the sky. She had always gotten the sense of peace when looking at the moon, yet she was supposedly immortal. She was the supposedly immortal deity of the sun. But the only thing she received when she looked at the sun was pain in her eyes. Each night, she came out here to the gardens outside a large, beautiful castle that rested near the top of a mountain. The castle being her own, to weep. She had made a decision in the past that was left her to be lonely in her world, crying silent tears of sadness and remorse. She scolded herself without words. Something was missing in her life. Something that she would even trade her life for. She was lost in her mind, lost in her sorrow, lost in her regret. That is, until she saw a shooting star in the majestic night sky. She uttered a wish in her mind, before she became overwhelmed with her emotions, beginning to cry even more. She opened her eyes and sighed again, before taking the way back to her room. But when she passed the roses, she heard some pony crying in the bushes to her immediate left. She looked into the bush, only to see a strange creature in the thorny foliage. She raised her brow. What do we have here? Celestia studied the small bipedal creature in the bush. It stopped crying when she spoke, and it looked at her. She had never seen anything quite like it in her entire life. Now, it had 4 legs, but instead of hooves on its limbs, it had hands. It had 2 small blue eyes and a little spot of dark hair on top of his head. The little biped started to cry again, and she felt in her heart that she needed to help it. She somehow knew the creature was still a baby, and her motherly instincts kicked in like morphine. So, she used her magic to gently pull the little creature out of the bush and put it onto her back. But what could have brought you here? She wondered incuriously to herself. She took the way to her castle for a return to her room with the little baby. When she was back inside, she trotted through the elegant corridor and walked to her room. But before she did, she passed the room of her sister. She regretted punishing her, but she did not have a choice. At this time, the little baby on her back started to play around with her magically flowing mane. Before he slowly fell asleep. Celestia put on a smile, one of the first smiles she had since she banished her beloved sister to the looming, lifeless rock in the sky. When it came to raise the sun, Celestia opened her eyes and looked to her left to see a little biped was still with her, or if she was just dreaming. When she did not see him, her heart skipped a beat in terror, because she was sure that for one time since the banishment of her sister, she would retake happiness in her life. But it seemed that but it seemed that she would be alone again for the long 20 years that remained. But she was absolutely positive that last night was not a dream, because it's so real. Too real. So, she started to look around for the baby. She looked under the bed, under the covers, even in her mane, but found nothing. She was about to give up and break down in tears before she heard a little shuffling noise from under the pillow. She instant She almost instantly pulled away the pillow with her magic, and there it was. She saw a little baby under it. There you are. You scared me for a moment. She sighed relief. She sighed with relief, now smiling at the small baby who was looking up at her with bewilderment. Its young eyes barely making out the shape of her due to being newborn. It grew the most adorable smile on its face, and Celestia smiled back, giving the child a small peck on the nose. The child reached up with his stubby arm and touched her muscle with a soft, small hand. Celestia's smile widened, and she laid down with the child. What should I name you? Celestia wondered aloud as the child moved around a bit. Celestia helped it do so, and now it was sitting up. She took a good look at his little body, with his little blue eyes and his onyx black hair. She thought for a moment. Onyx, little Onyx, she smiled. What do you think about that? Onyx seems cute, doesn't it? She asked the little baby, before she realized that he cannot speak. She got up and walked out onto her balcony to raise the sun, but before doing so, she quickly returned to her little Onyx. When she reached the little baby, she heard a faint, almost inaudible noise, like a growl. Oh, are you hungry? I'll be back in a moment. She let out a smile. She knew that he cannot understand her, but she enjoyed the feeling to finally talk to some pony and lets out all the real talking stuff. She went out of her door and asked the guard for some hot milk. The guard gives her a weird look before asking, But, Your Majesty, you seriously want hot milk? Like for foals? Are you not too old for that? Celestia raised a brow at the guard, before the guard gulped. Right away, Your Majesty. He rushed off, and the alicorn returned to her bed, where the baby lied on a pillow. She let him play with her mane for a few minutes, before the guard knocked on the door with the milk and opened it. She quickly put the covers over the child and took the milk with her magic before closing the door. Outside, though muffled, she heard, Why was she in a rush? I don't know. Maybe. Wait. I think I saw some pony else in there. A stallion? Forget about it. There was a small moment of silence. Do you think that Celestia's and he... Celestia's eyes went wide. She glanced at the door and shook her head. She'll deal with him later, but for now, she had a kid to feed. She took the bottle of milk with her magic, and she slowly levitated it over the baby's mouth. The baby eagerly took it with his small hands, and began to suckle at the nipple of the bottle. His eyes now closed. Celestia smiled. When the baby had finally drank it all, he coughed a bit, and she used her magic to lift him up and give him a small amount of taps on his back. Suddenly, he let out a loud belch. She quickly glanced over at the door to listen if the guards could have heard it, but fortunately she heard nothing. Okay, little one, what should I do with you? She heard laughter outside the door before she continued. I cannot leave you here alone, but I have my royal duty to do. Maybe if... She heard a conversation outside the door. I need to clean the room with the princess. Can I come in, guard? The princess will need... Oh, wait. Oh, that's a maid or something. I need to clean the room of the princess. Can I come in, guard? The princess will need some privacy, if you know what I mean. Um, not really. Let's just say the sheet will need to be cleaned. But why just the sheet? You don't want to know. Shut up, Steele. Hey, it's true. No, it's not. Celestia opened the door, poking her head out. Wait, what's the commotion all about? She asked with a raised brow. Nothing, Your Majesty. The guard straightened up. You may come in, Celestia said to the maid. Knew it. The maid nodded and stepped into the room. Celestia shut the door behind her. Celestia sighed as the maid began to clean. I require you to do a small favor for me, miss, she said to the maid. The maid stopped cleaning. What may that be, Your Majesty? I need you to take care of something very important to me. Celestia began explaining how she found Onyx and taken him in. He was lying on the bed, but the man didn't notice him until Celestia pointed to him. She looked a bit frightened, but she regained her composure. I understand. I'll take care of him. The maid nodded. Celestia smiled. Be expecting a raise in your payment. Thank you. Now I must tend to my duties. She walked out of the room, only to find the two guards beating the living hell out of one another. Her eyes widened a bit, and her brow raised. The guard stopped, and looked up to the princess, one of them about to bite the hind leg of the other. They literally froze. Oh, Buck, they both said in unison. You two are suspended, Celestia sighed, moving on from the two of them down the hall. Ah, Buck! Celestia couldn't help but smirk as she walked away. And that's the end of Chapter 1.